Who's knocking on my door?
Cheerful, outgoing, and friendly. That's how friends and family described young Timmothy Pitzen. And just hearing the way that they talk about him, it's clear to me that Timmothy was a good kid. A good kid with a sick mother.
6-year-old Timothy Pitzen of Illinois disappeared Friday. He was last seen leaving a Wisconsin-Dells water park with his mother. No one has seen Timothy since.
It's bad?
Her name was Amy Fry Pitzen, and her life had been plagued by the relentless effects of severe depression. The illness grew as one divorce turned to two, and two turned to three. At one point, Amy had even attempted to take her own life, but was ultimately unsuccessful. It wasn't an easy life for her, but in the early 2000s, things were starting to finally look up. Amy met a man named Jim Pitzen, and obviously, based off of the last name, they got married. And together they had Timmothy, a child who would instantly become the light of Amy's life. Amy's heart was with Timmothy. She even added an extra M to his name to, quote, make him more special. The bond the two shared was seemingly very strong. But elsewhere in her life, her marriage with Jim was becoming anything but. The two began fighting constantly, and their once loving relationship began to cool down.
I'll watch it. I'm committed now. Fuck it.
The fighting had got to the point where Amy became sure that her fourth divorce was imminent. But see, this is where the problem arose for Amy. Given her long track record with failing relationships and her history with mental illness, it wouldn't take an expert to realize that Amy was likely not going to get custody of the then 6-year-old Timothy, meaning that her true source of happiness, the child she held and loved so dearly, would be taken from her. A little before 8 a.m. on May 11th, 2011, Jim dropped Timothy off at school and watched as he ran towards his kindergarten teacher, his Spider-Man backpack swaying side to side. He drove off like any other day, not knowing that this would be the last time he'd ever see his son. When he came to pick Timothy up at the end of the day, he was told that he had already left. Just 30 minutes upon arriving at school, Amy came to pick Timothy up, claiming that there was a family emergency and that Timmy had to leave quickly. Jim knew nothing about it because there was no family emergency. Amy had lied. He tried calling her, but the phone went straight to voicemail. She had seemingly dropped off of the map, leaving Jim and others to wonder where they had gone. Jim was worried and obviously confused, but ultimately he trusted Amy enough to know that she wasn't going to hurt the son that she loved so much. As friends and family wondered and worried about the now missing pair, the two had driven to Illinois and were seemingly on an innocent, spur-of-the-moment vacation. Over the next few days, Amy took Timothy on a trip to a water park, a zoo, and a nice resort, 3 locations that were all captured on CCTV footage. Along the way, Amy had bought Timothy candy and toys, and honestly the whole situation is like a dream for a 6-year-old. Skipping school, getting candy, getting toys, going to a water park. I mean, from a distance, it seemed like Timothy was a lucky kid. At one point, the pair traveled to Wisconsin, where Amy had even called Jim's brother and told him that Timothy was safe. She also added that Timothy was hers, and only hers. After this, she called her own mother and repeated that Timothy was in fact safe. During this call, Timothy could be heard in the background on multiple occasions, including once when he had complained about being hungry. Same though. The strangest detail to come from these calls was the fact that she had never tried to call her own husband, but yet she called his brother. Things were clearly off, and they were only going to get more confusing.
What was
At roughly 10 a.m., the pair checked out of their hotel in Wisconsin.
Wait, he was what face?
And they were only going to get more confusing. The fact that she had never tried to call her own husband, but yet she called his brother. Things were clearly off, and they were only going to get more confusing.
Oh, that's weird.
At roughly 10 a.m., the pair checked out of their hotel in Wisconsin on May 13th. While in the lobby, CCTV footage captured the two at the front desk. And it's frustrating to watch. Such a young kid with full trust in his mother, likely not thinking anything of the situation that they were in. Seeing this footage is tough, because the mother knew what was soon to happen. But Timothy was innocently clueless. That night, Amy was seen on CCTV footage walking into a Family Dollar store in Winnebago. There she bought paper, pens, and envelopes. But missing from the scene was Timmothy. This was the first time throughout their trip that she had been captured on camera without the boy. But it wouldn't be the last. She then went to purchase food from another store in Winnebago, again without the company of Timmothy. She went unseen by cameras for a few hours after, until eventually she checked into a hotel in Rockford. She booked a room for one, and it was alone in that hotel room where Amy Pitzen died. On the morning of May 14th, 2011, her body was found in her hotel room. Deep gashes marked both of her wrists and her neck. Her blood revealed that she had also consumed a potentially lethal amount of antihistamines. And whichever killed her first, one thing was obvious. Amy Pitzen had committed suicide. And as is usually the case, Amy left behind a note. And in it she said sorry to her loved ones for causing this mess. She also said that Timmothy was safe, but she added the chilling statement that he would never be found. Another note was sent to her mother, which echoed the sentiment that Timmothy had been taken someplace safe and that he would be cared for years and years. She also added that Timmothy says he loves you. The case gained national attention due to its shocking and disturbing nature. People watched in disbelief as they heard the story play out on their televisions. The whole world was now seemingly wondering what happened to Timmothy. This was a question that would not be answered anytime soon. Days into the search turned to weeks, then months, then years. Every once in a while, someone would claim to see them
Nancy Grace can suck it.
or in a restaurant, but none of the claims ever turned out to be substantial. And the case that once had all eyes in America on it had quickly become generally forgotten by the masses as they clung to the next big news story. The hopes of finding Timmothy became lower and lower as the years rolled on, and by the time 2019 rolled around, many assumed the case.
Is this some weird like narcissistic like crab mentality shit of like if I can't have it, nobody can type shit? I think it kind of shapes up like that.
Be hopeless, but not Jim. He believed that his son was in fact out there and that he was in good hands. He also believed that he would one day be reunited with Timmothy and that the case would finally be solved. Some called him crazy. I would call him patient. And it seemed like his patience was about to pay off.
A boy at a Cincinnati hospital tells authorities he is Timmothy Pitzen. That sent police into action back here in Aurora, Illinois.
Jim got a call in early April of 2019 that stated that a young boy claiming to be Timmothy had been found. The boy claimed that he had escaped from the hands of two kidnappers who held him hostage for over 7 years. Once escaping their grasp, he said he ran and he ran and he ran until eventually being discovered. For a moment, Jim felt bliss. His son had been found. After all these years, his relentless efforts to find Timmothy had finally paid off, and the case was solved. DNA tests were administered to the battered and scared child as a precautionary measure to prove that he was telling the truth. The tests quickly came back, and they came back with shocking news. The 14-year-old boy was not Timmothy. His name was in fact Brian Reaney, and even more shockingly, he wasn't 14, but rather, he was 23 years old. The 23-year-old Reaney was a convicted felon who had lied about his identity in the past. In this case, he had watched a television special on Timmothy Pitzen and decided to impersonate the kid. Whatever his twisted motives were for this hoax don't even matter at this point. The blow this must have dealt to Jim must have been unimaginable. Insult to injury almost. Salt on the wound. His life was controlled by this case, and it was finally about to be solved with a happy resolution. But now he had to face the pain of not knowing all over again. This was the last major news from this case, and to this day, Timmothy has not been seen or heard from, and the case remains open.
Okay, that's cooked up, huh?
As is typically the case with most strange disappearances, a number of theories have been circulating around as to what may have happened to Timmothy, and it seems like the most plausible one right now is murder. Upon police examination of Amy's vehicle, they were able to find an unsettling amount of blood throughout her car, blood that belonged to Timmothy. This, along with Amy's sporadic actions and unfit mental state, has led many to believe that Amy had in fact murdered her own son. In her suicide note, when she writes that Timmothy was safe with people he loved and that he'd never be found, people take this as meaning that Timmothy was now in heaven with other loved ones who had passed. Upon further examination of her vehicle, it was determined that the car had been parked in a grassy area, possibly near a stream. Perhaps this suggests that after Timmothy had killed Timmothy, she dumped his body in the woods in a spot that she was sure that no one would ever check. This whole theory would also explain why Timmothy was inexplicably not with his mother for the majority of her final day. Perhaps she had committed the crime en route to Rockford. This would also explain why Amy had taken Timmothy.
Chat, let's watch something else, just because I really don't give a fuck what the theories are. If they don't bring like any new information or some sort of thought process, it's just kind of like, okay, cool, congrats, man. Yeah, I got it. Just theories and like bullshit. That's just kind of trash.